holding up the book now. Kids on Bikes. What we're doing is we're having an interview with John Gilmour and Doug Levandowski, who are the creators of Kids on Bikes.
I'm John Gilmour. I designed Dead of Winter and Dinosaur Island and a bunch of other games. Kids on Bikes is kind of my first foray into RPGs, but I've been playing RPGs since like second edition D&D on and off. And I think that's everything about me. I'm not very exciting.
And I'm Doug Levandowski. I have designed a couple things: Gothic Doctor, the unpublished card game that then got published. 7 Minutes in Hell, which is another RPG, and Kids on Bikes. And I also am just not that exciting either. Yeah.
One of my questions then is, the two of you collaborated on this game. What was like? Was there a moment? Was there a conversation that the two of you had that was kind of like the launching point of, the world needs this game. There's nothing quite like it. We should put some effort into putting something together to tell these stories. To me, it was a very unique kind of theme. Like in the book that you put together, exudes that in the art, in the language of how you described the GM, like how to run this game. So tell me a little bit about the origins of when nothing was on paper yet. How did that come about?
So I'd watched 2 episodes of Stranger Things and posted on Facebook, like, okay, well, who wants to make Stranger Things the board game? Because I was mostly designing like card and board games at that point. And some chatter back and forth. And John and I started talking about it and decided that a role-playing game would be a better fit for what we wanted to, kind of what we saw as the space to play around with it.
Yeah, and I think there were a few conversations that we had early on, and one of them was how people that we know that want to get into RPGs, generally, like, if you buy Dungeons and Dragons, even though they're like 3 rule books for $50 a piece, none of them really teach you how to play a role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So like we wanted to try to do things in this that helped teach people how to play board games or how to play role-playing games. And a lot of it we don't necessarily do in the rules, like asking the players questions and having them having the GM ask questions on the table helps people start like answering from their character's perspective and slipping into that and loosening up that bond of like, I can do this and be creative. And we also wanted to put some board element because like with Dead of Winter and a lot of my other games, I've been like things from the RPG world into board gaming. And then with this, I wanted to do the opposite. And we talked about ways to bring board game elements to an RPG that I don't really think other RPGs are doing. Things like making the skills really mechanical instead of just like swimming gives you +1 when you swim.
Yeah, I think that really came out in our game last night. My girlfriend actually joined us at the table. She'd never played tabletop role-playing game, and this system that you came up with, like, she was able to understand it and grab onto it like right away. I don't think that could be accomplished through playing a D&D or a Pathfinder. Like, it's just a little too crunchy for someone who's never played a tabletop game before. And your game is more about kind of the creative process and the social, like it's more of a social game, it felt like, than maybe some D&D tables I've been at.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go.
We really wanted to focus on telling story.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we said early on is we wanted it to evoke and have some aspects of D&D in it. Because like in Stranger Things, the Dungeons and Dragons is almost a character, or the game that they play that's very similar.
Yeah.
And you see them playing it, but they never really get into the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. So Doug was like, well, what if we use THACO? Or like, what if we just put some like really obtuse rules in there, like old D&D? And I was like, what if instead of that, We just gave everybody a set of polyhedrals for their stats.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then we sort of fine-tuned, like, so the issue that then came up there was, okay, so now I have my D20 stat. That's going to be unbelievably swingy. Like, sometimes if I have a D20 in brawn, I'm going to like punch through a wall, and sometimes I'm going to like break my knuckles on tissue paper. So like, what could we do to make those dice rolls less swingy? And we came up with the planned action versus snap decisions thing, which helped a lot, but still kept it thematic. Like, the really brave character in, you know, these sort of TV shows and movies that we were playing off of, once we expanded it beyond just Stranger Things. But the really, really brave character is in every day able to like walk around and swagger around and be really confident. But then like when it hits the fan, sometimes in those movies and those shows and those books, you see that character crumble. And so we thought, you know, planned action, snap decisions would be a good way to sort of give it that feel.
I like.
And we also,
go ahead.
We also wanted those like huge epic moments too.
Yep.
And like we wanted people who were doing something that, you know, was very unlikely to have and the ability to have like this huge success. So we started talking about exploding dice.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at first we were just going to let the dice explode one time. But then I was like, well, why don't we just try it where they can explode any number of times? Because really, your D4 has the best chance to explode.
Right.
Over and over again, so 25%. So we're like, that'd be great if like somebody was like, well, I'm not good at this, but I'm just going to swing for the fences and see what happens.
Yeah, and we had that happen twice.
Oh, really?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, where, you know, rolling the D4 explode, and like it was like kind of, you know, big stakes at the moment that it was happening, and so like just seeing like all the players like getting excited about that. You know, it happens once. Okay, you got the 4, try it again. Then that second 4 comes up, and they're like, oh, and people are getting ready to spend their adversity tokens to just, you know, sweeten the pot. It's pretty cool to see it in action.
Yeah, and that's the most exciting thing in games generally is when people are, you know, almost up on their feet cheering. Like that's what you want, I think, in a good game.
Mm-hmm.
So, this game, Kids on Bikes, I first heard about it actually very informally. I was at Origins this year, and I kind of stumbled upon the Indie Games on Demand room, and I was lingering about, just kind of waiting for the game slot to start, and I just keep hearing Kids on Bikes out in that hallway. So I feel like there's a lot of love for it, a lot of like good word of mouth going about this game. I'm wondering, I want to hear maybe, what are you hearing come up again and again from people that are talking about your game? What do they love about it? What do they love about it that they can't get from other tabletop games?
The thing that I've seen a lot on the Facebook group for it is people posting and saying that they're really excited to play this with their best friend who's never played role-playing games before, their boyfriend who's never played role-playing games before, their kid who's never played role-playing games before, and that it's just a rules-light system, you know, like we were talking about before, that they're just really excited to use as a sort of entry point into the role-playing games world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard a lot of that, and that's super exciting because that was really our target.
Yeah.
It's good to hear when that connects.
Yeah.
And one of our copy editors had never played any role-playing games before. And so they're a former student of mine, and they're a wonderful writer, so I had them take a look at it. And they said, I'm not the right person to look at this. I don't know anything about role-playing games. I said, you are exactly the right person to look at this, right? Like, so their input was super helpful, too, in making that happen. So shout out to SGH.
When you were designing Kids on Bikes, were there other tabletop games that you were drawing inspiration from, other games that you were looking at in terms of either the mechanical aspect of the game or how the collaborative storytelling aspect of the game comes together?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dud's kind of, and I don't want to speak for you, but more of a traditional RPG. Like, I think you mostly do Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yep. D&D, and I played Fiasco like 3 times.
Yeah, and I'm more on the other spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, where like I just don't have time for D&D anymore. So I'd go for the like short narrative stuff, like Our Last Best Hope or The Quiet Year, Fiasco, Dread, and I play a lot of like Apocalypse World or Powered by the Apocalypse stuff. So all of those things really influenced me in the design because I want to take the things that I love from those. Like at first, we talked about making it a Powered by the Apocalypse, but we figured we were deviating so much from the formula that at the end of the day, it's definitely inspired by the Apocalypse, but not PTBA for sure.
Yeah, especially the notion of failing forward. That's something that I played. I did get to play one game of Monster Hearts on the way back from Gen Con like 2 years ago. And that notion of your failures counting for something was really important to us to keep in here, so that when you off a dice roll, it's not the end of the world. Now you have an adversity token to carry forward.
Yeah, and we didn't want it to be like a Mark XP. Like we wanted it to be something that was rewarding and immediate that you could spend.
Right.
And again, tied into those like mechanical things that make it feel a little bit more board gamey.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, John, you have a lot of board gaming design experience. Doug, I think you as well, right? You've designed a number of more board games versus role playing games.
Yeah, a handful, not nearly as many as John, but yeah.
I guess my next question is more about what are some of the challenges about designing a tabletop role playing game that are kind of unique to that versus like a board game or a card game or other.
I know for me, it's that my least favorite part of designing the board game is writing the rule book, and RPG is just a huge rule book. So it was like this huge thing that I dreaded, but luckily Doug it compliments me in that, and he likes rule books. So
yeah, I really like just sitting down and tapping the keys and then deleting half of what I write because it's either hey, let's put tobacco in there, or just like a sentence that's way longer than it needs to be. So yeah, I could probably write rule books all day, but one of the big challenges for me in thinking about role-playing games is board games set up that the fun is doing the thing that you're trying to do well. And then, of course, you have to make sure that people have that it's easy enough to understand what you need to do in a tabletop board game, that they know what to do well so that they can feel successful. Whereas in a role-playing game, the balance isn't as important, but you still need to make sure that you're facilitating the fun, and figuring out how to write the rules and explain everything so that it's clear where the fun comes in is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, another big one is playtesting. It's really easy for me to playtest a game with like one other person and reiterate it over and over again. And I'm a huge advocate of the fail faster school of design, which is like you get it to the table, you play it, you make a change, you get it back to the table. And that's really tough to do with an RPG. Luckily, we did something or Dutch suggested something that was really smart, which is like compartmentalize playtesting. So like at Metatopia, we kind of broke it up into different sections where we would just playtest the character creation, or just playtest the town creation, or just playtest the actual mechanics of the game as different sessions, which really helped us. Get a lot of good feedback quickly.
Mm-hmm. And that was another thing that was a big difference. You mentioned the character creation stuff. In board games, you don't really do character creation, right? Your goal is to win the game. But in role-playing games, there's no... I mean, I had this debate, a long debate, like a year ago on Facebook with somebody, but I don't think there's really like a win-loss condition in a role-playing game per se. Maybe character death, maybe your GM says, well, you've beaten everything, it's over, but those are few and far between. So getting people to care about the decisions they make for their characters and how those characters are connected is important. You know, if you're playing Pandemic, you know that your medic is going to go do medic things, and you're going to do that because you want to collaboratively win, and that's it. Whereas in a role-playing game, why is my character caring about what happens to John's character, caring about what happens to your character? And so the character creation process, we probably spent more time on than anything else, refining and revising, working on those interaction questions that our friend Jay Treat really helped us out a lot with.
Yeah.
And Banana Chan too, who's helped with this whole process. Like, both of them were really all about, okay, but like, why do I care? When we did those initial tests, and that was super helpful.
Yeah, the relationship questions, I think, when we were playing our game last night, we had this one character that was, I think he was using like the conspiracy theorist trope or whatever, right? And so naturally he's building his character as like kind of this isolationist, like almost no personal relationship kinds of things. And so at that point, like, I'm thinking, like, how is this going to work? How am I going to pull this character into the story later? But then as we're going through the relationship questions, it seems like it shouldn't work, but it does. Like, somebody at some point throws out, well, he's my uncle. Like, he's crazy, but he's my uncle. And so, it just naturally brought that character that probably on their own in any other system, without that question, without that prompt, wouldn't have lent itself to being a part of this cohesive group. But just one question, like, brings that tie in, and then we've got something to build off of. So that works so well.
Thank you.
The way that you laid out those questions, and they're different enough that every time, like, there'd be a giggle every time one of those questions would come up, because everyone's like, you could tell there's like 4 different thoughts about how that question could be answered. And
right.
So another question I have is, one of the things that I really enjoyed about your book was number 1 in the book. You talk a lot about setting the boundaries for the players. You talk a lot about for both the GM and the players, how to build a environment around the table that's inclusive and makes it an environment that everyone around that table can have fun. I guess my question, I assume, you probably both would say, like, this is a necessary thing in any role-playing game, is probably to have those conversations. But did you feel that it was important in Kids on Bikes to, like, maybe more explicitly say that, just because of how open-ended it is, that someone could, throw something into the game without thinking about how it might impact the other players?
Yeah, I mean, for me, part of the importance of it is the real-world aspect of it. So since this is something where, I believe when we play role-playing games, we play some version of ourselves, either the self we want to be, a self we want to try out, or like really just ourselves. How to do that, but also how to do that thoughtfully and meaningfully, so that it's not, it doesn't feel like, even though it's a game that relies on tropes and to some extent stereotypes, the things that might be emotionally charged for people, we really wanted to make sure we were encouraging players to address responsibly.
In the back of the book, you've got a number of modules here, written by a pretty comprehensive list of. I wouldn't say that I'm all that well read in the tabletop role-playing game world, but I recognized many of the names that were in that list. So it was very. I assume that was that like a stretch goal on Kickstarter or something? Is that where those modules came from originally?
Yeah, a lot of them were. We early on wanted to make sure that we included a lot of our friends in the project, because that's one of the reasons that Doug and I both design, so we can kind of bring other people along the journey with us. So we had a good mix of people that we love to work with, and kind of bigger names in the RPG industry that Ivan and the rest of the people at Hunters were able to bring along through their connection.
Yeah. So I think you kind of are answering the question I had in mind. I was wondering, it sounds like maybe you personally know a lot of these folks. I was wondering, how did you reach out to them? Were they just really excited about what you were doing, and they reached out to you and were like trying to figure out how they could be involved? What did those conversations kind of look like?
In most of the cases, it was that we reached out to them, and it might have been somebody who was excited about it. So, like Anton, who sent us the initial email about playing characters with disabilities, in talking to him, we eventually just said like, "Hey, we're going to do this thing. Do you want to write one?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." And then some of the other people were people we specifically reached out to, or Ivan specifically reached out to, and said, "Hey, we're doing this thing. We'd like you to do this." So I'd say it was a pretty broad spectrum. It was less on the people emailing us and saying, "I'd like to do this thing," more like talking to people, realizing they'd like to do it, and then saying, like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you do this if you're interested."
Now that's definitely changed now.
Sure.
Now that people are reading the book, they're like, "Hey, I want to write a thing for it," which is awesome.
Yeah,
right. Really, really cool.
I'm wondering, from your own playtesting, your own, maybe after the book came out, games that you've run at cons, what have you, games that you've run with friends, do you have a standout story that you could share? A memorable location you developed, a memorable relationship that was built, maybe an interesting encounter that came up in one of your games, something that sticks out for you that you could share from playing the game yourself.
Yeah, one game I played Origins was one of the characters was loner weirdo. The other one was a laid back slacker. And so in their character creation questions, they decided that the relationship was predicated on one of them buying pot from the other one. And so that became like a big part of the story. And then it was just like a quick 2-hour game, but near the end of it, this werewolf was attacking one of the other kids in the group, the brilliant mathlete. And the loner weirdo says, well, I gotta knock this thing off of him. I don't have anything with me other than my bong. All right, I guess I'm gonna use that. So he hits the werewolf and takes the werewolf out, and then after the werewolf transforms back, they realize it's just a scared kid like them.
Oh no!
Who he's broken the ribs, like he critted on his brawn check, like it was wild. So he says, well, we can't take him to the hospital. I guess we gotta like get him to smoke something. And I'm like, so let me just get this straight. You're gonna, and one of the other players says, Doug, I need you to say it. You know what you want to say. You want to say, get the werewolf stoned. Say it. Yup. I'm gonna get the werewolf stoned. And like the table it was a great moment. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything that good. That's definitely the better RPG between the two, or the better DM between the two of us. But I mean, I've just had a lot of great moments with parents and their kids playing at convention. It's really great to see them play together and have a good time.
John's selling himself short. At Grand Con, he had a militant branch of park rangers helping to defend children against, what was it, giant spiders with the help of a bat child?
Yeah, Bat Boy.
Yeah. So don't sell yourself short, man.
Well, unless we end up having a few questions from the audience, but I think my final question to you is, what's next for Kids on Bikes?
What are we allowed to talk about, John?
I don't think there's been anything announced, and I can say Doug and I have been super busy. Doug's been writing a whole new thing that we can't say the name of, and then other people have been writing new things for something different, and I've been busy getting art around for new stuff. So hopefully we'll see some announcements. Everybody should definitely pick up the free RPG Day module next year. That's going to have a big moment in it that kind of talks about some of the future items. And I think we'll have the other product out before that, but I just don't think they've announced it yet.
The product you're currently getting art for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to be nebulous like that, but
Doug, did I see you tweet out that you've got an actual play podcast? Are you involved with that, or is that something that?
oh no, that's been fantastic. We're not involved with it. There's this group of people have started up Agile Play Kids on Bikes podcast. It's so good.
It's so good. Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah.
Or as they would say, it's so cussin' good.
Well, I feel like
I think it's kids_bikes, right, on Twitter.
Yeah, kids_bikes.
We'll definitely have to check that out. Encourage everyone to check that out. I think that this game really lends itself to that kind of format. You know, it's almost entertaining to just watch it be played, I feel like, just because of how much everything's... It's just so improv that there's a lot of magic that happens with that. So here we go. Kids on Bikes, everyone. Check this out if you enjoyed our conversation this morning. If you enjoyed seeing what we did with it last night, definitely encourage you to check it out. We've got a link down below the video chat in our little Amazon affiliate store that you could click to see where you can purchase it. Otherwise, where can people go to purchase the book? Renegade Games?
Yep, they can pre-order it through Renegade Games, and they'll also be able to pick it up Monday on Drive-Thru RPG. The PDF will be available Monday.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks, John. Thanks, Doug, for taking some time out of your I know you're very busy people, so we appreciate that you took the time to stop by and chat with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Take it easy.